Gentleman from Washington is recognized for 5 minutes.
I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Section 116 would prohibit the National Park Service from carrying out boat inspection or safety checks on the Yukon River within the Yukon Charley National Preserve in Alaska. This provision was put in at the request of Mr. Young from Alaska, who is upset with the National Park Service law enforcement at the preserve. Last summer, 2 park rangers arrested a 70-year-old following an altercation during a boat safety inspection. This case is still before the courts, but it has stirred considerable local anger, especially when it was learned that the 2 rangers had handcuffed but later released another local resident who refused to speak to rangers when approached. Now, in this situation, Mr. Young of Alaska is a longtime friend of mine, and I'm very hesitant to offer this amendment to strike his provision. But I think he's already won the case. The people there, the 2 rangers have been reassigned to another duty, and they do have jurisdiction. I've discussed this with the chairman, Chairman Young, and the Park Service always has jurisdiction within the national park. Now, the gentleman from Alaska suggested that the Coast Guard had jurisdiction or the state had jurisdiction, but we have checked this carefully. The Park Service has jurisdiction within the national park to look at safety on the river. And I think it is wrong to prohibit a safety inspection for people whose lives are at risk up there. I mean, I've been to Alaska many times. These rivers can be very dangerous. And to make sure that the people who are being conveyed, this is a commercial endeavor, that people who are being moved around in these boats are safe, and that the people who own the boats are safe, whether it's commercial or not. So I would like to yield to the ranking member and to discuss this amendment and the importance of it.
Well, first of all, I'd like to ask my good friend, why is this not an earmark? Why is this not an earmark for one particular national preserve? While we're considering that, perhaps Mr. Young can come up with an explanation, but I share the ranking member's great affection for Mr. Young. He's a good friend. But this also creates a precedent. Anytime something happened, a national preserve or parkland, they could come to the Congress and say, all right, no more inspections. And we could get a proliferation of these kinds of things specific to individual national reserves or parks. The fact is that if the Park Service has jurisdiction, then they have responsibility. And I'll bet you anything that if we were to say that there are to be no boat inspections, something's going to happen, and some serious accident is going to occur, and then people are going to ask, why in gosh name wasn't the Park Service there to do inspections? And it's going to go back to this, where we set a precedent not allowing any boat inspection or safety check. So I think that this precedent is a risky material. Yes,
the thing is, this has happened before.
Yeah.
I can remember one of our colleagues putting in a provision in one of these bills, I think it was in the Merchant Marine and Fisheries bill years ago, about one of the boats that was going up to Alaska to fish in these very dangerous waters. This wasn't in a river, this was in the ocean. And that boat went down. And there was many questions raised about why that member had prohibited boat and safety inspections of that boat. Now, I think the gentleman is completely right. This is a bad precedent. The gentleman from Alaska has already won. He has already gotten his view across with the Park Service. They have taken these rangers away. It's time to leave this. And we're doing this amendment in the best interest of Mr. Young. And if Mr. Young would like to get up and explain this, I would like to hear his explanation. I yield back my time.
Well, please don't yield it quite yet.
I won't yield quite yet.
The time of the gentleman from Washington has expired.
You can get time.
Okay.
Mr. Young.
For what purpose, gentleman from Alaska, rise? Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
And all, Mr. Chairman, members of the body, in all due respect, this is about the state's rights. This bill does not preclude the state of Alaska, the Coast Guard, or any other entity from enforcement on the Yukon River. It does not let the Park Service, they can still move on the river. But it does not allow them to enforce inspections of boats on the river that are private. Not in a business, but private. And I have to tell you a little story about this, and this is the reason I'm very adamant about it. The Park Service is for the people. It's not for the Park Service. And the Park Service in Alaska has become, very frankly, like I would say an occupied army of a free territory. And to give you an example, this man that was arrested was 70 years old with his wife, who happened to be from Germany. And I'm going to bring that up a little later. And a couple, 70 years old, 69 years old, and 68 years old, on a cruise on the Yukon River and a very seaworthy boat, Coast Guard inspected, and there was another boat on the river, and there was a distress signal given by the Park Service. And being a good Samaritan, they went over to help them out. And as they approached the boat, they flashed their badges and says, "We're the Park Service. We're going to board your vessel and inspect you for safety and registration." Think about this. A distress signal, and then we're going to board your boat, and maritime law says you will not board a boat on a moving river. You have to put it to shore. And the guy said, "Up yours, I'm going to go to shore." And that's what he did. And he gets to the shore, he gets out of the boat. The Rangers have already got a shotgun on a 70-year-old man and carrying a pistol out of their holster. And as the guy walked toward them, they started to say something. He's turning around and walks back. They tackled him and rolled him in the mud, a 70-year-old man. These are two young bucks, cowboys, and handcuffed this man, this 70-year-old man, and made him sit on the shore. And they took him a great distance down the river to a village and flew him to Fairbanks, drove him to Fairbanks, handcuffed. A 70-year-old man. This is your Park Service? This is not my Park Service. Well, it did go to trial, and the judge hasn't rendered the decision yet. In the first place, the state never gave them the authority to do any inspections. In the second place, they never gave them the authority. By the way, the Coast Guard did not give them the authority. And they do not have jurisdiction over that water. That's state's water. As every state in this union, it is the state's water. Now, have the Park Service act like that is dead wrong. So I'm asking you to support this amendment. This is an amendment that should be adopted because we have agencies today are acting like, very frankly, like occupied. Now, the lady I brought up was from Germany. And during the trial, they asked her, the prosecution, "Did you ever have a gun pointed at you?" And she said, "Yes, by the SS troops." Now, that gives you an idea. A 70-year-old lady, and have them point a shotgun at him? Now, that's wrong. Now, why you say it sets a precedent? Yes, it sets a precedent because the state's waters. And this amendment should not be accepted. We should leave it in the bill as it is. It's the right thing to do. I say vote down that amendment. Think about the little people. Quit thinking about these agencies. These agencies aren't God. Think about the little. Those people are abused by agencies and you're paying for them. And by the way, the one ranger had a record as longer than my arms. And they hired him to enforce the so-called parks regulations. So I'm asking you to think about this a moment. It's the wrong amendment. This is the right thing to do. It's time we start telling these agencies, think of the people, not the parks themselves. This is about parks and partners, and they're certainly not partners in Alaska. They say, we're going to educate Alaskans about Alaska. Now, this is a 70-year-old man who's been living there all his life. And to have that happen is dead wrong. And I yield back the balance of my time.
What purpose, gentleman from Virginia, rise?
I rise to strike the last word, Mr.
Gentleman's
Chairman.
recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, in response to my